Picture this. It's 1947, a courtroom in Dachau, Germany. The world's eyes are fixed on a woman accused of crimes so horrifying, so twisted, that newspapers can barely print the details. They say she made lampshades from human skin. They say she selected prisoners with interesting tattoos and had them killed just to collect their flesh like souvenirs. They call her the Witch of Buchenwald, the Bitch of Buchenwald, the Beast. But here's where it gets weird. The most shocking allegations? They couldn't prove them. Not in 1947. Not in 1951. Not ever. Yet her name became synonymous with pure evil. So who was Ilse Koch? Was she the sadistic monster the world believed her to be? Or was something else going on here? Today, we're diving into one of the most disturbing and controversial stories to emerge from World War II. And I promise you, the truth is more complicated than you think. Let's get into it. Okay, so before Ilse Koch became a name that made people's blood run cold, she was just Margarete Ilse Koch, born September 22nd, 1906, in Dresden, Germany. Nothing special. Lower middle class family. Protestant household. 2 brothers. Her dad, Max. Her mom, Anna. Pretty standard stuff. She goes to school, learns secretarial skills at trade school, gets a job as a secretary. This is post-World War I Germany, remember? The economy's in shambles. Politics are chaotic. Everyone's struggling. It's the perfect breeding ground for extremism. And in 1932, guess what Ilse does? She joins the Nazi Party. Now, this is important. She's not drafted. She's not pressured. She chooses this. At 26 years old, she's all in on the ideology. 2 years later, 1934, she's socializing with the local SS detachment in Dresden, and that's where she meets him, Karl Otto Koch, an SS officer, a man who's about to become a concentration camp commandant. They hit it off. The SS literally investigates whether they're fit for marriage. And I'm not joking. They had to prove their Aryan ancestry to get permission to marry. They passed the test. 1937. They get married right there at Sachsenhausen concentration camp, where Karl's working as commandant. Romance, right? Yeah, about that. July 1937. Karl gets a new assignment. Establish and command a brand new concentration camp called Buchenwald, near Weimar. Ilse goes with him, obviously. And here's where things get real dark, real fast. They move into the commandant's villa, a 3-story house right on the campgrounds. Between October 1937 and 1940, Ilse gives birth to 3 children, while living literally next door to a concentration camp. 2 daughters, 1 son. 1 daughter dies at 4 months old from pneumonia. Can you imagine? Raising your kids with a view of watchtowers and barbed wire? But Ilse wasn't just playing housewife. Survivors later testified that she'd assault prisoners, beat them, report them to the SS for beatings that sometimes resulted in death. She had slave laborers working for her personal projects. In 1940, she commissioned a massive indoor riding arena, cost over 250,000 Reichsmarks. That's about $100,000 in 1940 money. Prisoners reportedly died building it so she could go horseback riding. She had no official position, remember. She wasn't supposed to have any power, but she became known to the inmates as the Witch of Buchenwald because of her cruelty, because she was reportedly lascivious toward prisoners, because she seemed to enjoy watching them suffer. And the allegations? They get worse. Way worse. Witnesses claimed she'd order prisoners to serve her while she was completely naked, then have them beaten for daring to look at her. She allegedly stood above men digging ditches wearing a short skirt with no underwear, watching them work, then beating them with her riding crop when they glanced up. A former Nazi judge later described her as a hussy who rode on horseback in sexy underwear in front of the prisoners, and then noted down for punishment the numbers of those who looked at her. This wasn't just cruelty, it was psychological torture with a sadistic twist. She weaponized her sexuality to humiliate and trap prisoners in impossible situations. Look at her, punishment. Don't look, still punishment. And then there's the rumor that would define her forever, the lampshades. After the war, this story exploded. Witnesses said Ilse Koch would walk through the camp, inspecting prisoners. If she saw someone with interesting tattoos, artistic ones, colorful ones, especially Jewish prisoners with elaborate tattoos, she'd personally select them for death. Then, supposedly, their skin would be tanned and turned into lampshades, photo albums, even gloves. 2 inmates testified in 1950 that they witnessed a lampshade being prepared from human skin as a gift for Ilse back in August 1941. The trials provoked an absolute media frenzy. No detail was too lurid. Every newspaper wanted the most shocking angle. The lead American prosecutor called Ilse no woman in the usual sense, but a creature from some other tortured world. The media went absolutely insane with this story. The Beast of Buchenwald makes lampshades from prisoners' skin. It was horrifying. It was sensational. It sold papers. But here's the twist, and this is where everything gets complicated. When the Allies liberated Buchenwald, they did find objects made from human skin in the camp's pathology department. That part is true, but connecting them specifically to Ilse Koch? That proved impossible. First problem, she hadn't been at the camp since August 1943. The items could have been made after she left. Second problem, there was another suspect, an SS doctor named Erich Wagner, who wrote his dissertation at Buchenwald about tattoos and criminality. He had both motive and opportunity. And third problem, the big one, when it came time for her trials, the prosecution couldn't actually prove she ordered anyone killed for their skin or possessed any items made from human skin. So let's talk about her trials, because she had multiple, and they're fascinating. First, even the Nazis investigated Karl and Ilse. In 1941, SS Judge Konrad Morgan starts looking into Karl for corruption and embezzlement. In August 1943, both Karl and Ilse are arrested by their own side. Karl's charged with theft and murdering 3 inmates to cover it up. Ilse's charged with receiving stolen goods. The SS trial happens in December 1944. Ilse is acquitted. Karl is found guilty, sentenced to death, executed at Buchenwald just days before liberation. Ilse is released, moves to a small flat with her kids. But on June 30th, 1945, American occupation forces arrest her. A former Buchenwald prisoner recognizes her on the street. 1947, the big Dachau trial. Ilse and 30 other defendants face charges of war crimes at Buchenwald. The prosecutor calls her no woman in the usual sense, but a creature from some other tortured world. August 14th, 1947. Guilty. Life imprisonment. She avoids the death penalty because she's 7 months pregnant. Nobody knows who the father is. But then, the appeals process reveals something shocking. 2 Army lawyers review the case, Harold Kuhn and Richard Schneider. Their conclusion, in spite of the extravagant statements made in the newspapers, the record contains little convincing evidence against the accused. About the lampshade allegations specifically, the record is especially silent. Another review board agrees. No reliable evidence she had prisoners killed for their skin. June 8th, 1948, General Lucius Clay reduces her sentence to 4 years. He says there's no convincing evidence that she had selected inmates for extermination in order to secure tattooed skins. Clay later explains, the lampshades were made out of goat skin. He suggests she be tried under German law instead, because her crimes were mainly against Germans, not Allied prisoners. The American public loses its mind. Major newspapers demand answers. The Miami Herald asks, what further does the Army need to slap Ilse into jail? The New York Post calls it Clay's counter-atrocity. Ed Sullivan jokes whether the Army reduced her sentence so she could get back into the lampshade business. Veterans associations and the American Jewish Congress organize protests. When General Clay visits the U.S., he's picketed by protesters carrying lampshades, demanding he be removed from command. The Senate launches an investigation led by Homer Ferguson. Hearings, testimonies, drama. The conclusion? Try her again, but in West German courts this time. November 1950, Ilse Koch goes on trial in Augsburg, Germany. This trial lasts 7 weeks, 250 witnesses. The prosecution charges her with 25 counts of grievous bodily harm, 65 counts of incitement to attempted murder, 25 counts of incitement to murder. Her defense during the trial: I never saw anything at Buchenwald which might have been against humanity. I was too busy raising my 2 children. The lampshade allegations come up again. 4 witnesses testify they saw her selecting tattooed prisoners or were involved in making human skin items. But once again, the prosecution drops these charges because they can't prove the items were actually made from human skin. Ilse collapses in court. Twice. Her mental health deteriorates. January 15th, 1951. The verdict, 111 pages long. She's convicted of incitement to grievous bodily harm, attempted murder, and 1 count of incitement to murder, but not for the lampshade allegations. Sentence: life imprisonment. Permanent forfeiture of civil rights. The court's reasoning is chilling. They say her crimes were especially egregious because she consciously suppressed any feeling of compassion and pity she had as a woman. They note her stubborn and irresponsible denial and her inability to show the slightest admission of guilt. She appeals. It's rejected. She petitions for pardon multiple times. All denied. Ilse Koch spends the next 16 years in Aichach Women's Prison. Her children? Her son Artwin dies by suicide in 1964. She has a 4th son, Uwe, born in prison in 1947. Different father. He is taken after birth by Bavarian child welfare authorities and doesn't find out she's his mother until he's a teenager. In 1966, he starts visiting her. By 1967, Ilse is experiencing delusions. She's convinced concentration camp survivors are going to sneak into her cell and abuse her. September 1st, 1967. She hangs herself with a bedsheet. She's 60 years old. Her suicide note to Uwe reads, "There is no other way." Death for me is a release. So, who was the witch of Buchenwald? The truth is messy. On one hand, the most sensational allegations against her, the human skin lampshades, were never proven in any court of law. Multiple legal reviews found insufficient evidence. The lampshades that existed were likely made by someone else, possibly from goatskin. On the other hand, she was convicted of real crimes: assault, incitement to murder, abusing prisoners, using slave labor. Survivors testified to her cruelty. She lived in luxury while people died building her riding arena. Was she a monster? By any reasonable standard, yes. She participated in the machinery of genocide. She abused powerless people. She showed no remorse. But was she the cartoonish sadist who made lampshades from human flesh? That specific image, the one that made her internationally infamous, appears to be more myth than reality. And that's the disturbing part. Her actual proven crimes were horrific enough. But the world needed her to be a symbol, the ultimate Nazi monster, the feminine face of evil. The story of the lampshades was too perfect, too sensational to let go, even when the evidence didn't support it. Ilse Koch's legacy is a reminder that even in studying history's darkest chapters, we need to separate fact from legend, because the truth is usually more complex and more disturbing than the stories we tell. Thanks for watching. If this video made you think, hit that like button and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Do you think Ilse Koch's notoriety was justified, or was she a convenient scapegoat? I want to hear your thoughts. See you in the next one.